go ahead and try to get started. First of all, I want to welcome you all to the session of the Department of Code Enforcement. My name is Paul Ross. I'm one of the Mayor's Neighborhood Liaisons from downtown communities. Some of you all faces are familiar to me, but I think this is probably a session that there's a lot of interest in, obviously. And our presenter, of course, is the Director of the Department of Code Enforcement, Deputy Director, different. Heartbeat away. But Steve Wolf. Steve Wolf has a great presentation. He'll be available to speak to us and address your questions as we go on. Steve?
Thank you, Paul. For those of you who haven't had the pleasure of working with Paul, you're missing out because he's a great public servant. He does a lot for his community, and he cares a lot about Indianapolis and its citizens. So we're very blessed to have Paul. With me today, I have Mark Kaiser and Cliff Robinson. Mark is the Director of Operation. I'm sorry, I apologize.
City Prosecutor.
I am never going to get those right. He is the City Prosecutor. This was a recent change. You were the Deputy Prosecutor.
That wasn't clear.
Okay. And Cliff is an attorney in that office.
Yes,
he has a special title.
He's a Deputy City Prosecutor.
He is a Deputy City Prosecutor. So, and I am the Deputy Director. So, with that, we will get started. So, DCE, for those of you who don't know, stands for Department of Code Enforcement. This agency has only been around for a few years. It was created by Mayor Ballard out of many other agencies. It took on a lot of the different programs of other agencies and put it under one. Basically, that's the mission statement. I'm not going to read that for you because I was told not to read all my slides, so I'm going to save that for some other time. Important thing to know about the Department of Code Enforcement, we're divided into two divisions mainly. Permits and licenses. This is where you go to get your building permits. This is where you go to get the permit for your fence. This is where you go to get your drainage. This is where they review the plans. They review the plans by the code. So it's the Indiana Building Code, which is important to understand that all cities, all counties in Indiana, we have to regulate to the Indiana Building Code. That's the code that's adopted by the state. This isn't something that the city makes up. This is something that the state has. And all those regulations therein are part of the state code. So when somebody is going to build something that requires a permit, it has to go through a process called plan review. And in the plan review process, there are experts who know the building code, and they review those plans per that building code to make sure that what is being put on paper meets the code. So that's a big part of permits and licenses. Then there's inspections. Inspections is the bureau of which I'm sorry, the wait a minute. I'm very sorry. Okay. Sorry. So the inspections is actually the division that I'm in charge of, and that's broken into three bureaus. The Bureau of Construction Services. This is the bureau. These are the inspectors who actually go out and inspect the building once it has been built. So the process is that it goes through permits, it gets reviewed on the plans, and then once it's built, then the inspector goes back and makes sure that what has been built was built to the plans that were approved as being consistent with the code. And so that's the building side. We also have property safety and maintenance. This is where a lot of the zoning functions of the Department of Metropolitan Development and some of the Department of Public Works were put into this bureau. Zoning is a big part of it. A lot of people would know it, recognize it for the Highways and Grass program. The zoning code is a code that is Marion County specific ordinance. Depending on the the code and where it's found. Some of it applies to the excluded cities, Speedway, Beech Grove, Lawrence, etc. There's only 3, right? Okay, so there's no etc. But and some of it does not. So it depends on in the code where it's found. Depends on where that's going. Then there is the Bureau of Environmental Services. This is where the trash program is. A lot of you may know. So it's trash and illegal dumping. Those are 2 separate programs. I'll get into a little bit more of that later, but it's an important distinction to know. And with Bureau of Environmental Services is also air quality. So if there's smoke, a lot of times like illegal burning, that's handled by the Bureau of Environmental Services air quality. There's also trees and flora, that is for vegetation that is on private property that impacts the right of way. I really kind of already went through this. This is the permits and licenses overview. These are some more of the things that they do. Like I mentioned, the drainage with their sanitary, transportation, flood design. This is all pre-built, right? This is all on paper. This is all in the planning stage. They also do business licensing. A lot of the effort that goes into special events and things of that nature go through this part of our agency as well. These are the different permit types. You can see all of them. I'll just leave that up there for a minute. A lot of people, when they are doing a project, the one thing they're not expecting is drainage. Drainage is tricky. It's different. What people fail to understand is that when you place something permanent, it changes the direction of water, and that's really the most important thing to understand about drainage and why you have to have a drainage permit, because that small shed or whatever could very well impact your neighbor's property depending on the contours of the land. Right-of-way and infrastructure, these are the folks that do a lot of the driveway permitting, driveways, and pretty much anytime you're paving anything, it's going to impact something, because it changes the permeable surface to a non-permeable surface, which means water always has to go somewhere. Go ahead.
Does this include pedestrian right-of-way, any sidewalks?
Oh, that's Department of Public Works. Yeah. So the Department of Public Works does everything that's in the right-of-way. This would be anything for the private sidewalk. Yeah. And I'll give my email address at the end, so if you have specific questions, I can help you out more there. These are the different kinds of licenses. You might have seen some of these in the news recently with hotels, motels, really trying to clean up those. A lot of times that's the first thing people see when they come into our city. Taxi cabs are the same way. And you can see some more of these with refuse haulers and scrap and salvage. A lot of that has to do with the illegal dumping and trash, because what you'll find is that there are people on one side of town that will pay somebody to pick something up out of their yard or out of their garage or clean their garage, and then they'll go dump it in another part of town and not actually take it to the dump. And so one thing that's important to tell you is that if you're ever having anybody pick up anything for you, if you ever have somebody clean out your garage or whatever, you need to get a receipt from the dump. That's how you know that nothing from your site is going to end up in somebody else's property, which is quite often how illegal dumping gets tracked down. Inspections overview. Again, this is what I was talking about just a little bit ago in my overview. The 3 bureaus. Construction services, again, looking at structural, electrical, plumbing, HVAC. Those are the things, again, that are in the code. And the important thing to understand about the building code is the building code is minimum standard. That is the minimum standard for safety. It has to do with, a lot of times it has to do with ingress, egress, which is entrance, exiting, basically, and fire safety. So a lot of it has to do with a fire wall. So how will fire move through a structure? And that will change depending on the occupancy, which is the type of building that you are building. So if it's going to be a community room versus a private room, and there's all kinds of different things, and that's all part of the building code. And it can get a little complicated, but they're all there for the purpose of safety. And again, it's important to understand that this is only the minimum standard that
Just out of curiosity, do you do incremental inspections during the building process, or is it just at the end?
So that's a great question. So you start with a foundation inspection. So there are different regulations and standards for a foundation depending on the structure. So we'll do a foundation inspection, and then there's a rough inspection that's often where there's basically the skeleton of the building is up. You'll have the electricity running through. What you're doing there a lot of times is making sure that everything has been done to fireproof that. There's a lot of times what they're checking to do is make sure that when the electricity is running through the studs, which is the main structure of the structure, that it's fireproof. So there's fire caulking and there's insulation and all that. So before it gets covered up, that we know that it's been built properly and safely. And then you'll have a final, and a lot of times the final is, depending on the structure, in a commercial building, it's checking all of the emergency requirements. So does the sprinkler system work? Does the emergency lighting system work? All those kinds of things.
Are those inspection results public information, public knowledge?
Yeah, I will get to that in just a little bit. No, that's all right. It's good that you're eager. You're
Always.
all right. So, environmental services, again, as I said, air quality, forestry in the right of way, illegal dumping, trash. Weights and Measures is one. So Weights and Measures is a program that came from, I have no idea where. And it went from one bureau to another bureau, and right now, and where I hope they'll permanently place, because they're doing a great job in this, is in environmental services. You know Weights and Measures by the stickers at the gas tank. Now, it's important again to understand that they are measuring basically that you are getting the amount of gas that the meter says. Nothing more and nothing less in that inspection. It is purely a Weights and Measures inspection. But they do a great job, and it had been a while before we hadn't gotten to all the gas stations in a single year, but the last 2 years, very proud to say that we have done every single gas station this year and last year.
So you just measured the weight of the liquid. You can't measure if there's actual gas mixed with water or mixed with something.
Nope.
You just measure.
We don't have the equipment
does
to
that?
do that. That would be the state, I believe, but I don't know specifically. Okay. Please.
Did you find a lot of violations about that?
So, no, the answer to that is no. When you find a violation, it's usually the whole station. It's usually not like an individual pump or anything like that. However, there are things where if you're at a gas station and you don't see a sticker, it very well could be not, if it's not measuring appropriately, meaning that what you're putting into your gas tank is not actually what the meter says. It's actually most of the time a little bit more, believe it or not. But things like the automatic shutoff is sticky, or things like you can't read the price on the thing. Those kinds of things will make it so it does not get a sticker. It doesn't fail, but it doesn't get a sticker. And that's an important distinction. Property safety and maintenance. This is the bureau I was discussing earlier, where a lot of different programs were combined. Zoning, Abandoned and inoperable vehicles, very important to know. You have a vehicle that has an expired license plate that is technically an inoperable vehicle. You cannot drive that vehicle on the street. Anything that makes it so you cannot drive a vehicle on the street is an inoperable vehicle. It's got a broken windshield, probably can't see out of the window, it's inoperable. The highways and grass, the standard is it's 12 inches. If the grass is under 12 inches, it is not in violation. If it's over 12 inches, it's in violation. We have a yardstick at the 12-inch mark. It says bad neighbor. Under 12 inches.
How many times do you report the highways and grass before you start finding those people?
So that's a great question. So the way the process works, and the way a lot of these processes work, is that there is a built-in abatement period, voluntary abatement period. So with highways and grass, if you report something to the MAC and you say that there's high weeds and grass, the inspection team will go out and they will inspect that within 48 hours. If there is a violation, the owner of the property will receive what's called an NOV, which is a notice of violation. They will have 7 days to abate the property on their own. If the property is not abated, it will be cut. We will have a vendor cut the property. In most cases, a vendor will go out and cut the property. What the vendor will do is they also have the same yardstick, shows that the grass is in fact over 12 inches, and they will take a picture of that, then they will mow the property, and they will take the same yardstick and put it down and show that the grass has been mowed, and then the owner of the property will be fined the cost of mowing the grass and the administrative cost, which is $353.
The vendor has how long before they cut their grass?
The vendor typically has 7 days. So the whole process, when it's from the time it's reported to counting for weekends and everything is about 17 days. We've gotten it down most summers to 13 days. But you know, we're able to do that because of a lot of efficiencies that we've built into it, it's a good program, but it's not perfect. Please.
So we have a property that we call every month, and we go through this cycle every month. Is there anything that happens after 10 of these?
Right.
So when I was just saying that it's not a perfect program. Part of what's built into this program, the efficiencies, is that the vendors are able to mow property that is up to an acre, and actually this year now up to an acre and a half. There's also problems if there is a fence on the property. We have to get special permission in the form of warrants and things like that. It does take a while to get those. If they are over an acre and a half, the vendors typically don't have the capacity to handle those. Also, if there are a lot of bushes and things like that, the vendors don't have the equipment to handle
My question is more about repeat offenders.
Right.
So, okay. So, for those properties that are repeat offenders, so once it is in the system, once a contractor has mowed it, it remains in the system until it is no longer a violation. So they will continue to mow that every month, unless it's under 12 inches. So if they come back and it's under 12 inches, then they won't mow, and then they'll have to be called back in.
Okay. But there's nothing in the system that does anything about the actual offender.
Well, they continue to get fined.
And if they pay those fines, it just keeps going.
Yeah.
So when they pay that initial fine, it kind of goes away until their
Well,
next violation.
It doesn't necessarily go away. They still, so the grass.
In our neighborhood, it does.
The grass continues to grow. The contractors continue to cut the lawn.
We've never seen that.
No.
Where the contractors come back.
No.
Well, I'll have to follow up with you later.
Historic Boston Park, building on the corner of 37th.
You don't talk to Betty.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Very,
100 times for 5 years.
and our weed and seed.
Yes.
We may have to.
Yeah. So, go ahead. I'm sorry.
What is the policy on abandoned vehicles as far as having them towed?
So, if, it is, you can call the MAC. If it's on your property, you can get an affidavit, say this is not my vehicle, and it will be towed. If it's on the street, that's IMPD, they have to tow. If it is in somebody else's yard, so somebody else has a vehicle, there's a whole process, and usually if they do not take care of the vehicle, it will end up in the legal process, where basically end up with you, right?
If it's on a public street, it's got a tag on it that says abandoned vehicle. Do you know what how long it takes for them to tow that? Because we had one that was like a week. They had a sticker on it, but they just didn't do anything.
I don't know.
We were told 72 hours.
Okay. But that's if IMPD calls it. So if it's got a sticker on it, I would contact the non-emergency IMPD number for that.
That's what we did. We called that non-emergency.
Yeah.
Then they call the police, and they come out and put a sticker on it.
Right.
But then it sat there for about a week, so we were just wondering how long it actually took. It's supposed to be 72
I
hours.
think it's 72 hours.
Okay, thank you.
So.
Give the case number and call again.
So to submit a concern, like what we've been talking about with the inoperable vehicle and the highway in the grass, use the Mayor's Action Center. There's a phone number. You can also report it online. There's also an app, which I've used before. It's quite helpful. The MAC reporting tools, you can see these are some of the most commonly used ones, and you can enter those. This is an in-depth of the inspection violation process. It's really what I just explained a little bit ago. So for the sake of brevity and repetition, I'm not going to go do that again, but you can read through that. I'll give you a minute if you really want to. If you don't, just shake your head. It is. So a lot of the different violations will end up in administrative hearing. Another group that we have within the Department of Code Enforcement is our nuisance abatement. They're not under either division. It's been sort of something that's been created over time, and they do all of our legal work, which includes administrative hearing. They also do nuisance sweeps. This is where it's a multi-agency effort where we team up with several different agencies, including the health department, IMPD, we team up with IFB, basically anybody, and we go into one specific area, usually with a specific goal in mind to take care of some issue. Most recently it was a refuse hauler sweep. So we actually had IMPD, Health Department, and DCE outside of different dump sites, like dumps, what do you call those? Salvage yards. Thank you, salvage yards. And the people who were bringing stuff in, we checked to make sure that they were licensed. And if they weren't licensed, then that's a violation to get licensed. But the hearings we have are inoperable vehicles, unsafe buildings, highways and grass. They're conducted at our office. Our office is at 1200 South Madison, which is convenient from the standpoint that there's parking. You don't have to go through the whole process at the city county building. It's very nice. There's a little snack stand. Steve and Tammy are nice people. I'm sorry? It's Orange and Madison. Vesco's?
It does, there's
Bus,
a bus
yes.
stop right on the corner.
Yeah, there is a bus.
Right on the corner. Right next to the auction lot for cars right there. Across from Sister's Restaurant.
It's a little bit north of that.
There's a B&B in the, just past it.
Yeah. These are just some of the different kinds of hearings that we have. Unsafe building is a program that Property Safety and Maintenance has under their umbrella. This was a program that was formerly contracted out to Alton Hospital. This program, it deals with abandoned buildings. So these are buildings that people are not living in, and it's minimum building standards. We've gotten some help this year from the General Assembly with Senate Bill 415 that allows us to do a little bit more in going after neglectful property owners, and so we're in the process right now of really pursuing that.
What's the timeline for abandoned property?
Well, so that depends on a lot of different things. So if you have, so you call in the MAC and you say that there's a abandoned building and it's open, it's insecure, so unsecured. So inspector will go out 48 hours. They'll look at the property, inspect the property. It is in fact unsecured. Give the owner. It's all about due process. So just like the police and any other law enforcement kind of agency, we have to provide due process. That's where we have to provide notice, we have to provide peak time for people to take care of their own violations. I understand that that's frustrating, but that is the law, and you would want that for yourself if you were in that situation.
It's tricky knowing the difference between vacant and abandoned.
Well, it is. So with that, so we have to, so we provide that due process, we give them time to board the property on their own. If they don't board the property, then we have to board it. There's a citation sent to them. If they don't pay it, it turns into a lien. If the property is to the point that it needs to be demolished, which is a last resort remedy, has to go through a process, again, due process, where we have to...
Steve, I've asked the wrong question.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry that I asked the wrong question.
Okay.
How does this new legislation hopefully remedy the abandoned property problem?
Okay.
So sorry.
No. That's a great question. So, excellent question. The way that this new bill... We're getting there. We'll be all right. All right. So the way that this new bill, this new legislation, if a property is abandoned and there's prima facie evidence that it's abandoned, which means, and this is defined by state law, there are several things that it lists that this indicates that a property is abandoned. We can get that property certified as abandoned by going through a court. And by getting that property certified as abandoned, it doesn't have to go through the entire process that it had to go through before, allowing us to have access to that building a lot quicker, which means that we may be able to actually save the building so that it doesn't have to be demolished, because demolition is a very expensive remedy, but it allows us to get to buildings much quicker. This is something that was just enacted. It was just made law June 30th, or July 1, July 1, 1st of July. I mean, we've just now been able to start doing that, and we're actually working with our prosecutor here to work with the judge on how we're going to go about doing that. But that is something that has been provided to us, and we're very excited about that.
I got two questions.
Sure. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I have two questions. One is, once it's on the demolition list, how long does it take for it to happen? Because we've got a house that's been on the list for over 2 years. It was burned, and it's been on the list for a long time. And secondly, are there programs going to be put in place to help to rehab someone who wants to take one of these buildings and fix it up and make it livable? Are there programs for that?
So I'll answer the second question first. Yes, we're working on something like that. The answer to your first question is that it's important to understand that the list is very small for properties that have gone through the entire process that they can be demolished, meaning that all the due process is done for them to be demolished. Second, when it goes through that process, it doesn't necessarily mean that it will be demolished. It has what's called a demolition order on it. That is not an order to the city. That is an order to the owner of the property to demolish it. If the property warrants that, and that means that it is in immediate danger of hurting individuals or property, then it will be demolished. So if you've been told, well, there's a demo order on it, excuse me, that does not mean that that will be demolished immediately. It just means that it has gone through the entire process, and if there is resources available, it can be demolished.
Going back to the second question then, you said you're working on them. What is the time frame? What kind of programs are available, are going to be available?
So the same Senate bill that I mentioned earlier provided us with another mechanism. In addition to being able to bring properties and get them certified as abandoned, we're also working with the judge on a program that would allow someone to be able to take that property and move it and transfer it to somebody who would take the property and make it habitable. And that's like I said, this is something that was, we were just allowed to do it July 1, so we're in the process of really just trying to ramp up and meet all of the requirements.
So how do we stay abreast of what you're doing then?
Right, does it have a name?
Well, so it does not have a name yet, but we're working right now on identifying some people who can help us with that, and there will be some information forthcoming, media, and so forth. Please.
I heard a comment, there's a difference between a vacant house and an abandoned house. We have one in our neighborhood that's been, no one's lived in it for over a year.
Yeah.
It's been reported, it is secured though. Police have checked it out numerous times, but of course, how long will that last with all this stuff? But is there a difference between abandoned and a vacant house, or is that just verbiage?
To some extent it's verbiage, but there is a difference. So with the vacant house, again, just like with the building code, it's all about the minimum standard. The minimum standard per the Indiana law, and I know a lot of people don't like this, but if there's a board on the window, that is sufficient. That means it's secure. You can't live in a house necessarily that's been boarded. So if you see people living in a boarded house, going in and out of a boarded house, call the police. Because they're squatting and it's unsecured, exactly. But if it's boarded, it is secure. The minimum standard is the minimum standard.
If you're a abandoned building acting like a vacant building, we have a vacant building for 10 years. There's all types of problems that they do just enough to stay off of your radar. It is a vacant building, but they're acting like a vacant building. So once you see a pattern, is there any recourse there?
So if it's meeting the minimum standard, if it's boarded, if it's secured, you have to understand that we can only enforce the law. We have a very narrow scope of law that we enforce. We can't exceed that authority.
No, we want you to.
You don't want me with any more authority.
No, I wasn't.
I will run amok. I am not joking.
So it's similar to your situation, but it's more specific. Can a home for which property taxes that are being paid and they're up to date, can that be considered abandoned? This house has been vacant for over 8 years at least. We often have to call about the grass because it's not maintained, and there are actually broken windows. Health and Hospital has been called in the past, and it hasn't been boarded, but there are broken windows.
Are there broken windows on the second floor?
Main level and the second floor.
Okay, so if it's on the main floor, then those should be boarded. With that, call the MAC for that house, because that would fall directly in line with what we do. As far as the grass, call the MAC, because that will be part of the highways and grass, they'll be on the cycle. And, I mean, this is any small consolation, if they are paying the taxes, that means they are paying that $353 every time we mow the grass. Because that goes as a lien on the property, and liens are paid through their taxes.
But that, a house like that would be able to be caught abandoned because they're paying the property taxes. Is that correct, or could it be considered?
It's vacant.
Vacant.
However, the liens could overtake the value of the property. Depends on how
Right.
tough you want to play and how, whether you want to call every 15 days to get a grass cut, so that the cycle just,
Yeah. Well, we have people in the neighborhood who sometimes cut, but when they don't, we call the MAC. But just
well, the
that
MAC
it's sat
takes the
there.
money, that's the other thing.
Yeah, and just that it's sat there for so long without
Uh-huh.
anything in it. continues
Are they
to
speculating?
deteriorate.
I mean, motive is really important. Why are they holding on to this building? And what is it they hope to accomplish? Maybe you can help them accomplish their goal.
We have not
Maybe
been
they
able to
can't
find
unload it,
contact
maybe you can
information.
buy it and take, but it's worth,
Yeah. The property owner listed is listed at the address of that property, but there's no one who lives there.
are they living?
We don't know.
But their taxes are being paid.
The taxes are being paid
So
by someone.
report that to the MAC as far as the broken windows, and keep reporting the grass. And, you know, as long as those taxes are being paid and it's at the minimum standard, there's very little that.
I have one other follow-up question.
Okay.
What situations where you have a bank who owns the property and they're not going to get taken away? We have called the banks if there's contact information.
So the bank owns really very little property, and by that, what that means is the bank never takes title of the property. Title continues to be in the name of the owner of the property, and they're the one who are liable for the property. If the bank takes control of the property, we would hold the bank responsible. By taking control, they take title, because they are now the owner of record. So any of the same highways and grass liens, the same boarding liens, all that kind of stuff, would then go to the bank. But until the bank takes title, there is, and banks are lien holders like everybody else, including the city. Ma'am, you had a question back here.
If you have a boarded building, but people keep tearing the boards off, going in and out, if that's a police issue,
Do the inspectors go to the neighborhood association meetings?
We have, if they are requested, they will go to the,
How do you make that request? Because the neighborhood association meetings are typically after the work hours of the inspector.
sure. So we have inspectors and staff that go to many of the meetings. We don't go to all the neighborhood association meetings, but we do go to some of the meetings. If you would like to request an inspector, I'll give you my email address and we can get that set up. Please.
One thing
Sorry. Did you have a follow-up?
Yes, sir, I was just gonna ask you about permits. How visible are they supposed to be, and when should they be going up?
So per law, they're supposed to be posted, which means that usually you'll see them on the windows, you'll see them on the doors. There are some circumstances where that might make it difficult, right? If there's just a pile of dirt, there's no place to really put the permit. You'll see people put a stake and put a permit on that. The permit is supposed to be up before they start work.
One of the things that I think might be helpful if you guys don't already do it is have a couple of the people that are calling the stuff in, have them on record, because like I know in our neighborhood, we had a woman who basically was living in an unfit house for years, and every time an inspector would show up, she would kind of sneak around the back and come out a different way and, you know, ask them what was going on, and they'd ask if you own the house, and she'd say, no, I'm just a neighbor taking care of it. They didn't know that she was actually the owner, but all the neighbors knew. And so I think sometimes having that ability to be able to contact someone in the neighborhood who actually knows the person, can recognize them, that would be happy to work with the zoning department about saying, this is the owner, we can visually identify her for you, we can tell you her habits of coming and going, and any of that sort of stuff that would help you guys and help resolve the neighborhood issues at the same time, if there's a way to do that. It isn't too cumbersome.
You might be able to communicate that specific information to your neighborhood liaison, who can give them the code enforcement folks a heads up to next time you inspect goes out. It's the owner you're talking to.
Right.
So your neighborhood liaison can kind of bridge that information to people.
The other thing is DCE has a liaison with IMPD, and in that situation, there would be communications. His name is Sergeant Carter. He would work with my office to obtain legal authority from the court to have this person either forcibly removed or arrested. But there's a process for that. So yeah, you would have to, in that situation, notify DCE as well as IMPD at the same time, and then they collaborate, and then they would get me involved.
That wouldn't really be an inspector. The inspector wouldn't really be able to do much about it.
Right. It took a few years for us to get the whole thing, to a resolution, so I'm just sharing that as, something that may help other folks.
If you guys don't know Bill Carter is amazing. He's great.
Yes,
He
he
does
is.
a lot for the city. And if you ever want to write a thank you letter to somebody, think about writing it to Bill Carter. It's a great job.
Did
Please.
you have his phone number?
William.Carter@dd.gov.
It's 327-1270.
Thank you.
Again?
Not that I know that number by heart.
327-1270.
We got a question right over here. Yes.
Yeah, so we're Walk Urban Indy. We help neighborhoods do walk meets with IMPD and with the prosecutor's office for SEPTED. What we've discovered on these walks is frequently things come up and IMPD is saying that's really something for code enforcement. So on the last one, we asked code enforcement if we could get somebody to walk with us. It's like a group of, 20, 30 neighbors. And they said no. So, really?
Right.
I don't know the exact situation there, but I know that we have participated in different walks. I don't know
So
why.
you have, because we talked to the person who comes to our weed and see, and he said he ran it up the flagpole and they said no, it's inappropriate.
I don't know. I'd have to find out more. So I can't really answer that right
Talk to
here.
your county councilman.
Go ahead.
Does DCE cover the noise violation and littering, noise ordinance? What is that?
Noise, yes, but the thing about noise is a lot of the way that the DCE stuff works is that we have to give people time to abate. We have to see them do it a couple of times. If you want something stopped immediately, as far as noise goes, IMPD is
And what about littering?
we do not enforce litter.
And do you know what area it was?
I do not. So
Illegal
technically,
dumping, yeah.
technically littering is illegal. So it is the police, but you're gonna have a hard time.
And then as to the noise issue, it needs to be a collaborative effort amongst neighbors or property owners. They have to have noise logs, so it has to be more than one person. So it's not a spite between two people. So there has to be more people working together to create noise logs. And then it goes to the DC and then it comes to my office. And then once it comes to my office, we contact them and say, look, stop it, or you're going to be having to deal with the judge and a fine. And this is a process, but there has to be more than one person to complain on this, so you have to work with your neighbors. And then basically have a log from this time to this time, it was this loud, you can hear it. I mean, you don't have to get the decibel loud, but be very descriptive in the type of noise you're hearing. And the other key is the time of day, or the time of night that it's going on.
So we have two issues, and I just want to bring this up because others might experience. One is similar to what you said, where we actually can log it. There's one particular house, everyone knows the house. But the other situation we have is there are vehicles that drive through the neighborhood with very loud music. And sometimes they're visiting. It could be people who live in the neighborhood, but we can't necessarily tell. So we wanted some way to address, even if it's signage or something.
Unfortunately, with the vehicle, that would be more in the lines of IMPD jurisdiction. And you have to take a license, but the officer has to hear it himself. So if you got someone who have a booming car, I mean, and they see IMP, they shut it down, and if IMP doesn't hear it, they don't issue them a ticket. But that's usually when IMP's in traffic and they hear somebody, they'll pull them over and cite them, and they come to our office. But that's different because it's a moving structure.
Well, so I know my time is getting short, and I do want to go through a few more things, and then we'll finish it up with more questions. So I'll go as quickly as possible. So these next slides are how we interact with different agencies. One that we interact with quite a bit is Health and Hospital Corporation, otherwise it's known as the Department of Health, or Marion County Public Health Department. So for all of these different things that you see, the important thing to understand is there are different laws that are enforced. There's different authority that gives us the ability to do different things. So, for example, with trash, DCE does investigations occurring at unoccupied and abandoned properties. HHE conducts trash investigations at occupied properties. They have different ways of being able to remove that trash. They have a whole different legal process than we do. Interior inspections, DCE does not enter homes to conduct investigations. So you're talking about the woman who lived in the unsafe home. We do not enter homes. We do not have that authority. That authority was not given to us, and we do not have that. The jurisdiction, DCE's jurisdiction includes the consolidated city of Indianapolis, Marion County. Health and Hospital covers the entire county, including the included cities. The laws enforced, we enforce the consolidated city of Indianapolis and Marion County ordinances. HHC also enforces ordinances in addition to their own code of the Health and Hospital Corporation of Marion County. I'll give you 1 minute.
Did you contact them also through the NAC?
You cannot contact them through the NAC.
Okay, then.
They have a separate phone number. They're a separate agency. It's important to understand that there is a difference between the city and the county agencies. They are a county agency. We are a city agency. They have separate line, separate phone number, separate staff, separate administration. DCE and DMD, planning and zoning. DCE works with the DMD to enforce actions resulting from the Development Commission, variances, rezoning. Some of you may have experienced those in your neighborhood. All that stuff goes through DMD, and then the result is what the DCE enforces. Citizens Access Portal. This was a question that was raised recently. Is there a way that you can check on your MAC requests once they've been entered? Citizens Access Portal is exactly how you do that. Important thing to note here is less is more. So if it's at 75 West 25th East Street, 7525. That's what you want to put into the search filter, because different people write east, west differently. Some people put east, some people put east, some people put e period, etc., etc. And that is the end of the presentation. So I will answer questions now. I had you right there before I shut down.
Real quick question. We're battling a gas station in our neighborhood like probably everybody else. And now we have pop-up auto mechanic places. We have one, well, actually two. They've actually taken over the entire street on both sides with cars. What can we do?
So report that to the MAC. And here's my email address. Steve, S-T-E-V-E, dot Wolf, like the animal, but with an extra F, W-O-L-F-F, at indy.gov. And I can help disseminate to whoever needs to get these. I do not have a card. Right?
So we use the request in the app all the time. It's awesome. It would be incredibly helpful if that filter, when you research, if you can do it by your email address, instead of each case number one at a time.
Okay.
Because, yeah, we might have 10 out there. The other part of it is that frequently it'll just say closed. We know the issue is still there. There's no follow-up as to why it's closed. We received a notification of why it was closed. That's really frustrating.
All right, so I understand that. And a lot of times it's closed because it's a duplicate entry.
And sometimes it says duplicate, and that makes total sense. Sometimes it does not.
And that's, so the Mac is, as old as it is, it's still a relatively new technology, and they're slowly developing more and more. And that is an issue that we have exactly brought to their attention. So we are working on that. I do not have a time frame on when we're going to be able to.
Everybody should have requests in the end of
It's a great app.
Request ND.
Request in.
If you have an iPhone and Android, you can download that app. It takes 30 seconds to download. Once you enter your information, it's there, so you can high weed and grass,
Just walk down
all
the
you
street,
just take a
bam,
load
bam,
of
bam.
abandoned vehicles. You
Potholes,
take photographs and attach
that's my
them.
favorite.
All right.
Great app.
My question is on, I think the city of Lawrence recently passed new legislation that requires permits for solicitors to go door to door. Is there anything in the works for the city of Indianapolis, or is there any recourse against?
I've not heard of anything.
There is an ordinance that prohibits that in Marion County.
There is not one, or?
There is one that
There is
prohibits
one?
that, so you can call IMPD and report whoever this person is. But no one's allowed to go door to door soliciting anything, even if that includes vendors who someone's put up a fence in the neighbor and he sends his subordinates to go cover the neighborhood and there's one fence or something, they're not allowed to do that, it's illegal. So if you see that, you're taking out information, I wouldn't advise, I mean, unless you feel safe, because you don't know who these yahoos are half the time. But see what they're driving, get license plate number, some sort of identifying information. Could be beneficial if it's a corporate entity.
Yeah,
then you
some
can-
of them are. Some of them are.
That
not
IMPD would be making a visit. Sergeant Carter would go up to them and say, stop this, otherwise you're going to be sideways with licensing. Because all contractors have to be licensed. And I work with DCE and the administrative departments on finding contractors or pulling their licenses if they continue to operate in the center.
You might want to cover that with Chief Hyde, because we've had this conversation over and over and over again in our neighborhood. In all the IMPD meetings, we've been told that they are legal to go up to your house unless you have a sign that says no soliciting.
We were
on
told
your
that
house.
as well.
And that's-
We've been told that by him.
There's a code that says they're not supposed to. And I work with I just moved into a new neighborhood and that was posed and I presented that code to them and basically telling people don't deal directly, deal with it indirectly, get contact information, go to the manager, go to IMPD, report that. But then I'm sorry as to that, but I'll address that with the chief.
Right, because we've been told reporting that suspicious people, and then the police have to come out and check it. If you report it as a solicitor, they do not have to check it out.
No, that's yeah, no, I understand.
We've had a meeting after meeting.
And I've had a neighborhood association meeting with IMPD officers there, articulating the same thing, called a non-emergency line, and that's rules.